Los Angeles County is lifting its curfew tonight after several days of peaceful protests. NBC News correspondent Gadi Schwartz is joining us now from L.A. And Gadi, what's it like there today, and what was it like in L.A. while George Floyd's memorial service was going on?
Well, here at UCLA on the campus, the way that many of the students decided to memorialize him is instead of watching that memorial, they had one themselves. You can see it's still going on here. It stretches all the way down. There are about 1,000 or so people out here remembering George Floyd. And UCLA is really interesting because the students recently learned that their campus and one of the stadiums here was being used to process people by the LAPD after they were arrested for protesting and being out violating curfew. So it's angered a lot of students that there was a little bit of what seemed like cooperation with the LAPD when it came to the use of that stadium. UCLA has now come out and said that that is not what their values are about, and they said that they had no idea about it. But I want to ask a couple of people about that. Can I ask you guys, the use of the stadium here at UCLA for processing people, what was the reaction on campus?
I don't agree with it. I don't think it was fair. I think it was already set up and planned. These people have been coming after us since the slave trade, man. Slave patrol, since we were slaves back in the day, they've been abusing our people. They've been beating our black men and women. The doctors been doing our people wrong. So we coming here to stand up and stand on it. And we not bowing down and we not letting up, period.
What's it like seeing everybody out here today?
I love it. I love to see the camaraderie and solidarity around. I love it.
And when you learned about LAPD using the stadium here to process people, what were your thoughts?
I definitely don't think that it was an accident at all. We actually have 4 demands that I'd like to read out for you guys. The change of Derek Chauvin's, the 3rd-degree murder charge, to 2nd-degree murder as a result of his intentional act of killing George Floyd. We want the arrest of Thomas Lane, J.A. Hung, and Tu Ball, who are the officers that were onlookers to the murder of George Floyd. The arrest of all officers involved in the murder of Black lives, including but not limited to Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and Sean Reed.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. And that's something that you keep hearing out here in the crowd. The crowd chanting every 5 minutes or so, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor. Now that the arrests have come down with George Floyd, they want to see action taken on the Breonna Taylor case. And that's one of the first things that they go to after we ask what their reaction is when hearing about what's happened in Minneapolis. But as you can see, this continues. They're sharing stories over here of times that people, the speakers say that they've been racially profiled. Again, a beautiful day out here at UCLA. It seems like this peaceful protest is going to go on for another 2 or 3 hours. No curfew out here in Los Angeles tonight. In fact, the mayor here has said that they are planning on possibly defunding LAPD, which has been another demand from a lot of protesters out here, cutting the budget by about $150 million and planning to reinvest some of that money into communities of color. Some of the leaders that we've spoken to say that is a step in the right direction, but still not enough. Allison?
All right, Gadi Schwartz in L.A., where there is no curfew tonight. Gadi, thank you so much. In New York City, thousands of protesters marched in honor of George Floyd today, crossing the Brooklyn Bridge into Manhattan. George Floyd's brother Terrence spoke to them first. Here is part of his message.
I'm proud of the protest, but I'm not proud of the destruction. I'm going to say that again. I'm proud of the protest, but I'm not proud of the destruction. My brother wasn't about that.
MSNBC senior national correspondent Chris Jansing joins me now from Gracie Mansion, where we're expecting another protest tonight. Chris, for people who don't know, who are not from New York, that is, of course, the home of New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. What are you expecting there tonight?
Well, everyone's waiting to see the answer to the big question, which is whether or not there'll be more confrontations tonight between peaceful protesters and police. The biggest confrontation in Manhattan last night happened with folks who had started here. This will be at least the 3rd night of protests around Gracie. Take a look just down the street. That's where Mayor de Blasio lives. It's the official residence. We don't know if he was there last night, but several hundred people gathered. And it's exactly the same thing we're expecting tonight. Very brief statements by some of the organizers. But then back here, and we have just a handful of people who have started to organize. It's still about an hour away from when this is all going to begin. But then they do just about a half an hour of silence remembering George Floyd. But then while a lot of people went home because it was a half hour before curfew, hundreds of others decided to march. And we caught up with them about 2 hours later around 9:30. Here's the way the system is working. Basically, Mayor de Blasio has said, as long as you're marching peacefully after curfew, you can do that, but it'll be up to the police officers to decide whether or not to call on you to disperse. Last night at Midtown, when that happened, it had started to rain. Police officers wanted the crowd to disperse. Some of them went home. Others decided not to, and about 60 of them ended up being arrested. There's been a lot of criticism of Mayor de Blasio about why he's doing that. He said, look, enough is enough. If police tell you it's time to go home, the curfew is in place, I'm the mayor, I have the right to do that, and you don't go home, you risk getting arrested. But already there have been calls, for example, from one Queens council member. He wants a vote of no confidence for de Blasio. There's been some widespread criticism, but de Blasio's been holding his ground and saying police have been handling this well. If he sees examples of where he feels they've overstepped, he will look into it. But we are expecting tonight more people to march, and we'll see how many of them stay out after curfew and how police handle it, Allison.
Chris, another concern, of course, as you are there reporting in a mask, the coronavirus. Governor Cuomo saying today that he's expanding testing for protesters. And so much of the video we saw today, people were wearing masks, Terrence Floyd wearing one. Have you gotten the sense that people out there are concerned and that they're doing things to stay safe?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I've heard a lot of that. I have been out marching with protesters every day since Sunday night. Huge numbers of people. I would say in all cases, the majority are wearing masks, but there are always many who aren't. And in these large protests, people are shoulder to shoulder. And one of the things that de Blasio said was, look, we need to refocus on where we're going. Monday is supposed to be the first phase of reopening in New York City. It's the area of New York State, which, of course, is the center of the coronavirus crisis, that has not begun to reopen. And so they would like to make that turn. They're asking people, please continue to wear masks. Again, many of them do, but it's very hard in these marches to avoid people who don't wear masks because there's so much jostling back and forth. Again, another thing that we'll be looking for tonight is how many people turn out for these, because as they go down the street, the numbers often dictate how close people are to each other, Allison.
Right. Yeah, hard to separate when you're in large crowds like that. Chris Jansing, outside Gracie Mansion, thank you so much.
Yep.
And tonight, Lester Holt will host a primetime special live from Minneapolis. He'll take a deeper look at the push for justice, how we got here, and how we can heal this divide. America in Crisis airs tonight at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, right here on NBC News Now. Former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis speaking up about the president's response to the George Floyd protests, a response he calls a, quote, threat to the Constitution. In a statement to The Atlantic, Mattis said, quote, Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. President Trump firing back at the retired four-star general with a series of tweets calling him, quote, the world's most overrated general, adding that he didn't like his leadership style or much else about him. NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joining me now. And Kelly, former Chief of Staff John Kelly defending Mattis. What is he saying today?
Well, John Kelly is sort of refreshing the president's memory about how things actually transpired with James Mattis when he left the administration. He had, of course, been a longtime military person who then became the Secretary of Defense and resigned in protest over the president's Syria policy. John Kelly, who was himself a Marine general before becoming Secretary of Homeland Security and then Chief of Staff, is saying that President Trump needs to think back on how that actually went out. Now, of course, this is a case where you've got former generals and former staff members and cabinet secretaries to the president who are now challenging the president's account on things and his judgment and leadership. That is a stark and different experience than what we've had. There have been some staffers who have complained about this or that, but people of this magnitude of stature, it's really notable. And President Trump, who expects loyalty from those who serve him, doesn't always show it in reverse. And we saw that certainly with the comments about James Mattis. Back in the beginning of the Trump administration, one of the things that the president touted was the number of generals that he had working with him, working on his transition and campaign, and that was a big part of the image he wanted to project. And then so many of those generals have moved on. Or in the case of Michael Flynn, he was fired. That's its own controversy. Secretary Mattis resigning, ultimately John Kelly resigning as well. And so this is a case where those who have kept their silence or have been very limited, in the case of John Kelly, in critique of the president, coming forward now at a time when the president is clearly vulnerable politically because of his handling of the George Floyd protests and his decisions about how to police Washington, D.C., which have put him at odds with the mayor as well as some governors around the country. Allison?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.